Hello and welcome to another Conversations with Carrie and Dani. We're here to continue our conversation from our last video, just about the fears that maybe now seem a little irrational that we were kind of consumed with when we were active members of the Seventh-day Adventist Church, and just how we are hoping to cope with those right now when we know that we have more freedom. So, Dani, where did we end and where are we going today?
Oh, actually, if you don't mind, I would was after we finished the last one, something I really wanted to say was in case I was wondering if people might be wondering why fear is a big deal. And I thought, to me, I know why fear is a big deal because I was living with the fear. But maybe for people that didn't have those fears or that have different ones, I just wanted to share that from a like a therapy point of view, just briefly, that Fear, fears, all those fears and stresses, they raise your cortisol level.
Yep.
And it raises your cortisol levels. And when your cortisol levels are higher, it can do all sorts of things. It can impact on your sleep. Higher levels of cortisol have been known to make people put weight on.
Mm,
To impact. I know a lot of people get really, really stressed and they go, "Oh, I'll always lose weight because I don't eat when I'm really, really stressed." But just these general low-level fears that are brainwashed into you and that they just sit underlying everything all the time. And it also affects your thinking. After we finished up, I was thinking, we mentioned the close of probation, right?
yep. Yep.
And I've known, like, I don't want to get into the whole theological thing again, but just quickly to explain how it impacted my life, how fear impacted it. I've known my whole life what Ellen White teaches about the close of probation.
Hmm.
I've also known my whole life that the Bible's really clear and says that when Jesus died on the cross, the curtain was ripped from top to bottom.
Yep.
So the space between the holy place and the most holy place was all done away with. It was opened up. So I've known both those things my whole life.
Hmm.
But it was only about 18 months to probably only 18 months ago that I realized that those two things have lived inside of me my whole life. But how can they when they don't agree? I mean, the only way Ellen White's story could be true is if somebody stitched the little curtain back up again so that it could be like opened in 1844 and God could move between the holy and the most holy place. But according to the Bible, those things were already one because the curtain had been ripped. And
Right.
I know the church has got some complicated theories on how it happened, but I never knew about them. But it astounds me that I have held two completely opposing ideas
Oh yeah.
and believed them both 100%.
Yeah.
I mean, how did I do that? And then I don't have an answer to this question, but I'll share it with you in case you've
Sure.
got thoughts on it. Um, to do that, it's there's got to my understanding from counseling is that to hold two totally opposing thoughts and believe them both 100% is to create like a split in your psyche and who you are, which is not good for you.
Hmm.
But I've never known that or even realized that any of these things existed within me because it was the only normal I ever knew.
Right.
Um, so I don't. Did you ever hold both of those totally opposite thoughts inside you at the same time? Did you ever think about them?
Oh yeah. I mean it. I think I tried not to think about them too much because it was crazy making, and in order to what finally things started to make sense as I was making kind of journeying out and watching different YouTube videos, going down rabbit holes, and I stumbled across one that they talked about. I forget the name of their channel. They're not that active anymore. I think they said what they wanted to say. It's Clinton
No.
Baldwin was on that one, talking about cognitive dissonance.
Ah, that's the fancy word for it.
That's the
Yep.
fancy word for it. And there's so much in Adventism that in my opinion, can cause a lot of this cognitive dissonance if you overthink it. And so I think I got to the point where a self-protective mechanism was I just tried not to think about it because it just didn't make sense and it made me crazy. So a lot of the people say, what church do you go to? Oh, I'm Seventh Day Adventist. Well, what do they believe? I'm like, well, we're kind of like Baptists, but then there's all this other stuff. So there's a lot of like yes buts in Adventism. Yes, you're saved by grace through the blood of Jesus Christ, but you need to keep the Sabbath. Well, what does that look like? That's a whole nother video right there. You can't, you're not supposed to eat different things. Are you kosher? Well, not quite kosher. It's not exactly kosher, but if you're, really dedicated Adventists tend to be more on the vegan side and that, but there's all these yes buts, and then your brain just, yeah.
Laughing because it was so normal. Like even 2 years ago when I was in the middle of it, it was normal. But when you put them all together like that, I'm going, wow, that's crazy. And I have to laugh. But
I
I don't know
I
how
work
else. I don't know how else to react but to laugh because I believed all of that. I was like full on in the
I
middle of
worked
it.
with a gal at the office, the dental office I'm still at. She's no longer there, but she would ask me questions. She's like, so that's in Leviticus, like about the dietary stuff, and she's like, hmm. And then she would just like kind of probe, and I felt like I just couldn't really explain myself, and so that was like 4 years ago, so since I started working there, now I think life has changed a lot for me and stuff. But it's just I don't think you really understand as a Seventh day Adventist if you are completely surrounded by Seventh day Adventists. Many work with, if you work at one of the large universities or if you work in the school, you only attend, you know, all your friends are Adventists. Nobody's challenging you, and you're not talking to people who maybe believe differently. So you don't understand really the aspects of Adventism that can be so crazy making if you focus on them
Yeah.
so much.
Yeah. It's it's thinking about the conversation we had about fears.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and cortisol. So when you're living with fear, and there's all these underlying fears, I didn't recognize them as fears because I was just taught it was normal. This is what Christians live with. This is what you have to do to keep God happy.
Yep.
And so I didn't realize I was living with fear. But when I look back, I know now that I was.
Mm-hmm.
And so fear raises your cortisol levels. And when your cortisol levels get high, and when that part of your brain that's involved in survival
Mm-hmm.
and trauma, when all that kicks in, it impacts on your ability to your higher reasoning and functioning.
Yeah.
And I really believe, and I don't know if I'm sure Steve Hassan talks about it somewhere as well, and that bite model of control. But while your brain is and everything is consumed with all these base level things and sorting out fear and survival, um, there's not the higher cognitive functions, they're still there, but they don't function as clearly and sharply as they would. So you talked about not thinking about some things to live with the cognitive dissonance.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't dealing with any cognitive dissonance because I hadn't even realized I believed 100% to opposing thoughts.
Right. Yeah.
I hadn't even realized it. And I believe that the not a reason I didn't realize that was because of how living with fear, so your body gets kicked into survival mode, how it affects your brain and how you think. And I think it's part of, for me, it was part of how the church basically controlled me, was that I was scurrying around with all these little level fears for keeping God happy, that
Mm-hmm.
there was never room to think about some of these big picture things. And the big picture things are the things that would have rescued me
Mm-hmm.
and given me freedom from all the rules and regulations that I was living under.
Oh yeah.
Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, and I think that's how you can. I have the bite model actually up on my other monitor here, and it just says, so it talks about behavior control, information control, thought control, and emotion. So behavior um is just about the groups regulate and dominate their members' actions and behaviors through strict rules, rewards, and punishments, limiting individual anonymity. Information control, um, they control information through censorship and propaganda, restricting membership's access to outside perspectives. Focus and the thought control, um, techniques used by groups to shape beliefs and attitudes, suppressing clinical thinking and promoting conformity. And emotional control, they manipulate your emotions, fostering dependency and loyalty through love bombing, guilt, and fear based indoctrination. And I think a lot of that too, with you're talking about like emotions and stuff. I, I never felt, and that could be partly my personality as well, but also growing up Adventist, is that you don't make decisions based on your emotions.
Oh, goodness, no. No, your emotions
Absolutely
will
not.
lie to you.
Yes.
No, 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 no. You
Yes.
don't have to feel a thing. You only have to do what's
Yep.
right.
So you basically make a pros and cons list in your head. You don't go with your gut feelings about stuff. And so
Mm.
now, at the age of 47, trying to figure out what do my emotions mean? How do I express them in a healthy way? How do I, you know, it's
Giving them a space to even exist would be different.
yes,
Um,
yes, yes.
it's funny that you bring that up because that for me connects right back to the issues I always had with the Sabbath.
Mm,
And I don't know about you, but I mean, I didn't plan to talk about Sabbath today because I was thinking about that fear stuff. But now that we're here, I'll touch on it a tiny bit because it's connected
sure.
to fear for me
Yep.
and the fear and the levels of control. So, okay, outside of the doctrinal stuff, if you still live in a world where you have the traditional Adventist thoughts about the Sabbath, I encourage you to go and read Galatians and listen to podcasts on Old and New Covenants. My friend said to me, this is a really new one for me, and my girlfriend, and we were talking about it. And I said to her, but we still have to take the Ten Commandments. And she goes, they were written for Israelites, Danielle. She said the Ten Commandments actually is a small section of a giant law. Why don't you keep, if you keep them, you got to keep them all. And I said, oh, listen, typical me. I said to my very knowledgeable, very well studied other Christian friend, like she knew nothing. I'm so embarrassed now. I said to her, oh, yes, but you don't understand. See, when we become Christians, we get adopted into the family of God and we become spiritual Israelites. So all those things are now applicable to me. And she went, wow, that's really cool. Could you just find the Bible verses for that for me and explain it to me? Like, a polite way of saying to me, prove it, but without being confrontational. And
Sure.
that was this time last year. I
Mm,
spent weeks reading my Bible, and you won't be surprised to know, Carrie, that I couldn't prove that, would you?
yeah.
Okay, so that was a giant point for me. But back to the Sabbath stuff, and that what you talked about feelings. I do the right thing on Sabbath. And I've had this conversation for 30 years with people. And I know some of my friends say they love Sabbath. It's so exciting. I've got a girlfriend that talks about loving Sabbath. But the truth is, even though she says she loves Sabbath, when I talk to her, she's always frazzled on Saturday. She's got so many church jobs and so many everything.
Hmm.
I never see any peace, any rest. She's always frazzled, even though she speaks of loving it. So for me, I used to pray, oh God, please help me love Sabbath. Please help me really understand it. Please help me desire to want to spend more time with you. I had this long list of things I'd pray in rotation. And I never understood. I hated it.
Hmm.
I'm sorry, I enjoyed going to church. I enjoyed potluck lunch, seeing my friends. I didn't enjoy Sabbath. I could not keep Sabbath. I couldn't keep it, not ever.
Right.
I
Yeah.
struggled with the whole, I struggled with the whole, the whole guarding the edges of it. So, you know, and then the fact that I used to look at the clock and think, what time does sunset? What time does it
Hmm.
set tonight? And then I'd feel guilty because I was waiting for it to finish. Oh, good, the sun's gone down. Quick, turn the telly on. I want to see something.
I'm
Right,
sending
go out now.
I'm sending you a link. Okay, this is a
Okay.
little bit of a rabbit trail. I have this book. I'm sending you a link on Facebook Messenger, and I want you to click on it and tell me if you have seen this book before. This is the Internet Archive of the book. It was published in 1992. I bought it when I was struggling with Sabbath.
Out. I just flick across. Takes me a second to bring up the other ones here.
Yep.
I've only got one screen, and
Yep.
hopefully I can find you again. Oh, what book's this? I've never heard of it. Seriously, there's actually a book called Oh No, It's
Oh
Sabbath
no,
Again,
it's Sabbath
and I'm
again,
not
and I'm
ready.
not ready. Oh no, it's Sabbath again. The Homemaker's Guide to Making Friday the Easiest Day of the Week. So I have,
I've
do I don't know if I pitched that one when I was going through stuff.
I've never ever heard of that book. I never knew it
So
existed. I just
it was written by, let's see who published it. I'm assuming, oh, Pacific Press in
okay,
1992.
yep, yep.
And so basically this woman goes through about how on Friday how to get your house ready for Sabbath. She legit would put different bedspreads on her family's beds for Sabbath. Like go through and change the blankets for Sabbath. No. So it didn't help me at all. It just increased my guilt as a pastor's wife of two young children on how why am I not ready, you know? And we would have people over for dinner and I would try to have as much stuff done Friday afternoon, but of course I was still finishing up stuff Sabbath before I went to church. And as soon as I got home from church, pulling things out of the oven, chopping up salads and different things, you know, so we were never this real strict about. I remember my grandmother would bake things Friday and then she'd put it back in the oven when you got
Yep.
home from church Sabbath. I did have, oh, I had one of my friends where she's an older gal. I'm sure she's retired. She's probably 80 now. And she was telling me about when she grew up, her mom was Adventist, her father was not.
Mhm.
And her mom would send them to church, but she wouldn't go herself, but she was really strict. She wouldn't send them with a lunch. She wouldn't send them with money to get lunch. And so
What?
she would have they would have nothing to eat until like she would come to get them later in the day. I don't remember all of the details, but as a young mom, I was just appalled. I'm like, how do you not feed your children? You know?
Well, fasting's recommended by Ellen White. It's not a big drama, surely.
Oh, I gave my kids snacks during the sermon.
Oh, I I always felt eternally guilty. One, that I didn't keep the Sabbath, and two, that my desire to keep it wasn't strong enough that it enabled me to do it, and three, that I didn't enjoy it. So when I got to the point where I realized it was supposed to be about relationship, I felt even worse because I'd say to myself, okay, like when I was dating, I used to get so excited and I would wait in advance for my loved one because this is the examples I was given growing up, and this is what it is for Sabbath. God waits in advance. It's like a date with God, and I
Mm-hmm.
always I just felt always guilty that guilty that I couldn't didn't keep it, guilty that I couldn't keep it, and guilty that I I didn't even want it to occur.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I've talked to so many of my friends about it over the years, and friends. I've got so many friends that are pastors. And I talk to them how and why, but my feelings just never changed. So when you were talking about feelings before, that's the strongest one that comes up for me was about the Sabbath, and it's just I'd go to bed Saturday night begging God's forgiveness because I didn't want an unconfessed sin in case I died in my sleep because I hadn't kept the Sabbath properly. And I mean, I don't know. When I say it now, it sounds really silly and really trivial, and it sounds just strange, and I feel a bit weird trying to express it. But these are real fears that I lived with.
Mm-hmm.
And, and part of me is angry because I didn't have to live with them. I could have actually liked God. I mean, it was never important to me that I liked God. I mean, it was important to me, but I
Mm-hmm.
don't feel that it was emphasized in the
Right.
Bible studies I went through. It wasn't emphasized at the churches I attend. And someone had said to me once, I don't know if I've said it before, someone said to me about a year ago, do you like God? And
Mm.
I was stumped. If they'd said, "Do you love him?" I'd have been like, "Yes," because since I was a wee kid, I've read the Bible stories, Uncle Arthur's Bible stories. I
Yep.
knew I loved God. But if you ask me, did I like him? Because love and like were always separated. You have to love your neighbor, but like you said about your feelings, you have to love your neighbor, but you don't have to like your neighbor. So love is an action, not a feeling. And then there's that whole psychology book written by some Christian psychologists that says love is a decision.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what we were brought up, that love is a decision. You decide to love someone. You don't actually have to like them.
Mm.
Um, and again, it took my total atheist brother giving me a hard time about, and I still believe in God. We don't agree on the same things,
No, sure.
but some of the points he made about actually having real empathy and not
Mm-hmm.
faking it, and I'm like, I didn't fake empathy, but you know what? if you're expressing an empathy that you don't actually feel because you've been told love is a decision and you should act in that way, how you feel doesn't matter, then that's the same as faking empathy. But you could
Right.
never have told me that when I was in the middle of it all.
Right. And I think that one of the things that you have to have conversations with people who believe differently than you as well. And you can value the opinions of people who, like your brother, who is an atheist, to value his opinion here. And I kind of thought that, the moral compass of Adventism is, it can be a good moral compass, but like if you didn't have that, oh my goodness, you would totally sin. And now it's like, okay, so that moral compass looks different. I still definitely have a moral compass.
Yep.
I still believe in God. I still want to give to my community and stuff, but also shockingly, I discovered that some of the most empathetic and nice people that I've met don't even go to church at all.
Yeah.
And that I think innately you can be super kind and very empathetic and want the best for other humans without even believing in God.
Yeah. I mean, I know that a couple of months back, there was a strange, I don't know how it came about, but there was a strange car or whatever out the front of my brother's house, and they checked, and a guy had got drunk and he couldn't drive home. Someone they'd never met before in their lives, and they brought him in and gave him a pillow and a blanket and put him to bed on their couch. I mean, these are wonderful people, my brother and his wife. I mean, I wouldn't have done that,
Yeah. I mean,
to be honest. I mean, maybe I would have if it was actually right there. But if you asked me, would you do that? I'd be like, I don't think so. Faced with an actual real human being, I know I generally react differently than the theory,
mhm,
but still, I just think, what you said's true
mhm. Oh, and
about
I
the
think and I
compass.
think some of the fear of Adventism too is your whether it was overtly told to you or something is you needed to be afraid and cautious of developing relationships and friendships with people outside of the church because they might lead you astray. So you're afraid of them.
I just always knew that they were going to hunt me down and kill me one day because the Bible's really clear about that, apparently.
Apparently. Yeah.
Ellen White had a vision.
Yeah. She was clear
I,
about that. I
I
wouldn't go
don't
so far to say the Bible was.
know. I don't know if it was an Ellen White vision or just something else that got taught to me, but um, I can remember being told that there were dungeons under Catholic churches. And now I got to be honest, I've never been in a Catholic church, but I'm really, 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 really feeling the urge to go and have a look at the local one in our closest town because apparently it's got beautiful windows and insides. And there's a part of me that just wants to talk to the priest there and ask him, do you really have dungeons under your church? I know he'll laugh at me, but there's still that, that part of me that wants
There's
to
there's
ask.
mausole there's crypts and mausoleums under most of the old ones in Europe, but I don't think that, as far as I know, they weren't used as prisons. A lot of them will have chapels down underneath. We were just when we were over in Europe this summer, we've toured some churches. I don't remember if it was a Catholic church or not, but more than likely, and there's crypts underneath and little chapels downstairs and, very just ornate and just gorgeous, so
You know, I, I just, when you were talking about that, it come to me. Okay, we were talked in our last video about the fear about the end times and the close of probation stuff. And I'm so, I was gonna say I'm so embarrassed now to confess that I realized talking to you, I spent more time praying, God, make me the sort of person that can survive the end of time and what's to come. Make me the sort of person, sort of person that can survive what's going to come. Meaning, make me the sort of person that will stand up and take a bullet for you or whatever I need to do, whatever the horrible thing of the day is. I spent more time praying that than what I ever spent praying, God, make me a nice person today for all the people that I'm going to meet.
hmm.
Who is there in my life you want me to talk to and touch today? And that's the difference between a love-based Christian life I see now and a fear-based one. But if you'd asked me at the time, was I living a fear-based one, I'd have said no. But I was. And again, there's that whole how fear changes the chemistry, your body chemistry. Um,
Hmm.
oh, don't get me started. And so I know I said I was embarrassed to confess that I spent
Hmm.
more time praying that than the other.
Hmm.
But when I speak the word embarrassed to you, my counselor brain kicks in and goes, no, no, there's no point in shame. Shame is one of those emotions that keep us stuck
Sure.
in the pattern that we're in. Shame's also something high control religions or any high control abusive relationship can keep you in and use to control you. Name it for what it really is. And so then if I have to name it now to you for what it really is, it becomes grief and anger, which are the two sides of the coin.
Hmm. Yeah.
It becomes grief and anger, grief of the for wasted time and anger at the lies I was told.
Yeah. Well, and for me, a lot of the emotion that I felt after leaving Adventism was betrayal, was kind of what I felt, that the things that I had been taught and I had been told, specifically relating to Ellen White and all of this stuff about her background and who she really was, and then knowing that the Adventist Church has access to the documents and they chose not to show that, and to me, I felt betrayed, because I remember, um just thinking about Ellen White and how cool she was and all the awesome stuff that she wrote, and now I'm going, she didn't write that stuff. She plagiarized it and had her. So that's a whole nother rabbit trail. But yet then there's the grief of what could my life have been, but then I can't
Mhm.
look back to it, because right now I think the Lord put my husband and I through what we were put through to for such a time as this, as to where we are right now.
Yeah, which is to speak the truth now. Hey, that book you were talking about, when you said that, I immediately thought about, are you talking about the Sydney, is it Sydney Cleveland book, Whitewashed? Because I remember being angry because I've got friends that are church pastors. So some of these things I know from people also inside the church. So if it's the Sydney Cleveland one that I'm thinking of, seriously, this guy,
Yep,
he
this
was
one.
paid. He was paid by the Adventist Church. 5 years they paid him over 100,000 a year to research Ellen White, and the people, and he believed 5 years the church paid him to research her because he was a good Adventist.
And I
And
hadn't
in this,
this one I had
and,
didn't finish. I have it, but I
oh,
know, this is the one,
yeah.
that I read
Oh,
most.
okay, Steve Daly. Okay,
Yeah.
so I've read Steve Daly's one, but the other one had a bigger impact for me initially. And I'll tell
Yep.
Steve Daly's one's incredible. But
Hmm.
Steve Daly wrote that as someone that's already left the church. It's the other one, Sidney Cleveland, he was an Adventist. The church employed him to research Ellen White. The Adventist church paid him hundreds of thousands of dollars to write a book on Ellen White. And when he said, this is my research, she dabbled on the edges of the occult. She was potentially a trance medium. Lots of people of the day were talking to spirits, and it was part of the, what we would call an evil spirit now, but they were talking to spirits that aren't necessarily godly ones, and it was all part of this big whole culture of the time. And that the whole thing about spirit guides and stuff. I mean, this wasn't written by someone that was an ex-Adventist. This was written by someone in the church that was paid by the church to research it. And they did exactly what you said. The church the church wrote a little letter to all the church pastors saying, oh, we've finished our 5 year research project, nothing to see here. And they swept it under the carpet. So he decided, after it took him another year or two, from what I understand, to put it together and publish his research because the church was never going to show the stuff they paid him to find. I mean, I was so angry. I was so angry. I'm still angry that people in control know these things. There are people at the top of the church that have the power to set everybody free from so much stuff. When I say power to set them free, let's change it because maybe there's people listening that don't feel enslaved. Let's put it this way. There's people at the top of the church that have the information to expand every Adventist's picture of God and make it so much bigger. by saying some of these limiting beliefs that you've been given, even if you don't feel limited, some of these limited beliefs that may feel normal to you, so not limiting, they don't have to be there. They're not biblical. And these people just tried to sweep the information under the carpet and hide it because the church is a big business. The Adventist church makes billions of dollars. The Adventist church made billions of dollars out of COVID. The Adventist church has the third biggest healthcare system in the world.
Mhm.
They just make so much. They have the best paid pastors in the world. They're one of the only churches that supply houses for their pastors, like they do in Australia and New Zealand.
Mhm.
There's so much money in it. There
Yeah.
is so much money in it. I mean, there's so much money in it. Um, and I didn't know
Well,
any of that. Oh,
and I think it comes back to the pride of Adventists to think that they have the truth. And if you break it down, and they say, and this, hopefully I'm saying this simply put, Adventism says that all of its beliefs can be supported by the Bible. Period. They will say that. Our pastor, when we asked for our membership to be dropped, he said, because I told him, I said, I'm leaving because I no longer believe that Ellen White was a prophet. I don't believe what she wrote. And he said, well, I believe that everything is in the Bible. And if you put that, okay, so all other Christians have the Bible. Okay. There's amazing scholars in other denominations that have been studying the Bible for a very long time.
yeah,
Why don't they have the same distinctives as the Adventist church if the Adventist church can stand on the Bible and the Bible alone?
yeah.
But they can't.
Oh,
Whether they want to believe it or not, if you are still in the Adventist church, for me, one of the things that took me out is I sat down and I read Galatians by itself.
yes.
Just read it. And I've had some people say, read it every day. It's a short book. It won't take you long.
Carrie, I just want to comment on that because somebody said that to me too. Someone said read Galatians, and I have honest, your experience sounds different to mine. I did that. I read Galatians, and for a long time, nothing changed, so I stopped reading it. And the reason it didn't change is because every time I read it, I saw what I had been told was there.
Yep.
I had to start asking God, what do you want me to give up? And I had to give up some of the things that I'd been told was there and that I believed were there in order to see what is actually there. And it was a process of quite a few years for me.
And that
And I don't
wasn't.
know how else to describe it. It's like if someone said to me, all right, that's red.
Mm-hmm,
And so every time I see this color, I think red. And
mm-hmm,
then suddenly at 50, I realized that it's not red, it's black.
yep,
It's really hard.
yep. Well, and I think everybody is reached in a different way, and that was one of the steps in my journey was reading Galatians. It wasn't
Yep.
obviously the one
Oh,
thing.
no, no, I think it's a great one. I just wanted to express that that I just wanted, in case there's anyone else out there like me, I want them to read Galatians. Galatians changed my life, but I just wanted them to know that it took me years to read it and see the plain word of Galatians, what's actually there, and not what I has been told was there. So when I read Galatians, I could see just what Galatians saw
Mm-hmm,
was saying without all the stuff I'd been told I had to find in Galatians because it existed. Then
right.
I saw that beautiful thing that you're talking about. But I just wanted to acknowledge to anyone listening that that was really hard for me, was to
Mm-hmm.
see what you said, just Galatians.
Yeah, it's so hard because and it's your brain has been wired over your lifetime to believe and to act in a certain way, and it doesn't change overnight. And we're all still processing. It's probably going to be a lifetime of and it's a journey, and you gotta embrace the adventure of that journey, to a certain extent, and hopefully um simplify or try not to allow those fears to affect you. And hopefully, at some point, we can finally, through the help of the Holy Spirit, to be like, okay, we don't need to be this scared about this anymore.
Yeah.
Like we need to embrace the love of Jesus and realize that you don't have to be scared. And I think we live in so much fear.
That's true. And I just wanted to say that I know I get really strongly emotional about these things when we talk about them because I believe them and
Hmm.
like I said, I'm still on the beginning part of a journey that you're further ahead on. And that but life is better now than it ever was. I really feel the need to say that.
Oh,
I think Carrie, you said at the end of our last video about fears. If there's any fears anyone listening wants us to talk about, if you experienced a fear that we haven't mentioned yet in the past, or if you're still experiencing a fear, then please drop a note below. You're welcome to come and
yes.
talk about it. But if you don't want to, make a little note below. We'll read the comments and we're happy to talk about our experience of what your fear is. You don't have to come on and talk about it if you don't want, but we'll
Sure.
share how we've experienced it if we have.
Yeah.
Um, because it's always going to be a bigger picture than what we've experienced. There's so much more.
Yeah, but it's so broad. Life is just so much more free and glorious, I think, now than not having to worry about this micromanaging fear that we lived under. But I'm sure we're gonna do more talks on fears. Leave us some comments
Yep.
below, like and subscribe, and we will see you next time. Bye, y'all.